You're listening to
Campus Killings,
brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime, Missing Persons,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
and
Killer Communications.
All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
Hi, listeners. Today's case was requested by Brian B. He writes, quote, "Hello, Amy and Megan. I have been a fan of Campus Killings and Women in Crime ever since my wife turned me on to your work on a road trip. My small alma mater, Kalamazoo College, experienced a tragedy in 1999 that shook the community. I wonder if you might have some interest in exploring the story." Well, Brian, we definitely have an interest in exploring this story. So a big thank you to Brian for being such a fan and for sending us this suggestion. In researching today's case, I came across a book called The Events of October, Murder-Suicide on a Small Campus, written by now retired Kalamazoo English professor Gail Griffin. It was fabulously insightful with a ton of firsthand accounts and original documentation. It also includes her own personal experiences on campus during the tragedy.
Wow.
The majority of today's research comes from Dr. Griffin's book, and we'll have a link to it in our show notes for anyone who wants a deeper dive. And Megan, maybe it might be something to consider for book club.
I know. I was thinking that as you're saying that. I'm always on the lookout. Thank you.
Yeah. And those of you who don't know what we're talking about, over on our Patreon at Women in Crime, one of the perks is a book club where Megan and a group of amazing supporters read a book and discuss it.
My favorite. I've been waiting my whole life for that book club.
Okay. All right, so back to today's story. Before we get to Dr. Griffin's recollections, let's take a look at Brian's alma mater, Kalamazoo. Known lovingly as K by faculty, students, and alumni, Kalamazoo College was founded in 1833 by a young minister named Thomas Merrill, who wanted to build a Baptist college on Michigan's frontier. By 1855, Kalamazoo was granting degrees and began a long and varied growth process into the unique liberal arts school that it is today. Kalamazoo is nationally known for the K Plan, which involves in-depth liberal arts studies along with a required full-year study abroad for junior-year students, as well as a senior thesis. The college also has an incredibly rigorous curriculum, but the amount of work required for academic success is made up for in the close-knit community that students have created through small class sizes and one-on-one professional relationships between faculty and staff. So in 1997, when Kalamazoo native Maggie Wardle was looking for a college that would launch her pre-med career, she didn't have to look very far. Dr. Griffin describes Maggie as every admissions counselor's dream student.
Aww.
Her resume included a high school 4.0 with a heavy focus in the sciences due to her desire to major in pre-med. She was an accomplished musician who played piano, French horn, and mellophone. Do you know what mellophone
I
is?
was just about to ask. No.
I didn't either. It's basically a French horn, but for marching bands.
Oh, okay. She played 3 instruments and so far
Yes.
pre-med and a 4.0.
Well, and she was also an athlete who lettered in both basketball and golf.
You got to be kidding me.
Yeah. She also, that's not it. She also did a year in the Student Senate and was a National Honor Society tutor in science.
Oh, she's like a dream kid.
Yes. And she also earned dozens of honors as a high school senior, including certificates for outstanding achievements in science, journalism, and jazz band, as well as an award for excellence from the Kellogg Community College.
Wow.
Wait, I'm not done. She also received Michigan's Interscholastic Award for Educational Excellence and a Michigan Competitive Scholarship, among several others. She also somehow found the time to work part-time at her uncle's construction company. She also split her summers between Michigan, where her mother and stepfather raised her, and North Carolina, where her father and stepmother lived. To top this all off, Maggie's older brother, Rob, was diagnosed with autism, and though she was the younger sibling, by the time she was in middle school, she became his de facto caregiver when she was staying with her father and stepmother.
I don't know how this girl slept.
No. And her parents would later recall that Maggie was always looking out for Rob and often acted as a social translator or assisted him with day-to-day tasks.
Wow.
While Maggie was attracted to Kalamazoo for its rigorous programs and study abroad component, she picked it mostly due to the fact that it was only 16 miles from her house, so she could still dorm but also be close if Rob needed her.
Wow.
She settled into dorm life easily, and just like high school, Maggie filled her schedule. She joined the golf team, she took a science-heavy course load, and she immediately started making friends. By the end of the first term, Maggie had 6 close female friends who she spent most of her time with, but they also ran in a larger, overlapping circle with tons of other students.
Mm-hmm.
And this was not an uncommon occurrence since the college was so small. It was actually possible to at least be acquainted with almost everyone on campus.
That's kind of nice. When I was looking for a college, I was like very focused on having a, not big, but like a mid-sized one. But then in like working on a smaller campus and then hearing some of the descriptions of them, I see such a benefit of having a smaller campus.
Yeah, I could see benefits of both.
Yeah.
Maggie made friends wherever she went, and she was described as someone who just exuded gentleness. She also became quickly well known for her sharp wit, her great sense of humor, and for being an incredibly calm and confident person no matter what the situation. One of her best friends described her as, quote, that ridiculous person who could do everything, but someone who never talked about it. She was humble about all of her accomplishments. You didn't know how amazing she was until you had spent some time around her.
Wow.
However, there was a downside to Maggie's gentle confidence. Her friends quickly noticed that she tended to pick men who had what one of them coined as, quote, wounded bird syndrome.
Ah, I see.
Now, Dr. Griffin suggests that perhaps Maggie's lifetime of always having to look after her autistic brother, coupled with her own confidence and accomplishments, made her the perfect target for young men who were looking to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And this attraction had started long before college. In fact, when Maggie was in high school, her stepfather described one of her first boyfriends, a boy named Sean, as literally looking for someone to take care of him. And even as Maggie ended their relationship after they went to separate colleges, Sean would not let go. It got so bad at one point that Sean showed up to Maggie's dorm after she refused to talk to him anymore, and she had to call security to get him to leave. Once he had been removed, he then called her to say that he had handcuffed himself to his car until she would talk to him.
Oh, boy. Gosh, not good.
Luckily, eventually it blew over, but her friends attested that they had a hard time understanding her taste in men. So much so that when Maggie became interested in a quiet young man named Neenef, they all begged her not to go out with him.
And now, a brief word from our sponsors.
Hi, I'm Chris Gethard, and I'm very excited to tell you about Beautiful Anonymous, a podcast where I talk to random people on the phone. I tweet out a phone number, thousands of people try to call. I talk to one of them, they stay anonymous, I can't hang up, that's all the rules. I never know what's going to happen. We get serious ones. I've talked with meth dealers on their way to prison. I've talked to people who survived mass shootings. Crazy funny ones. I talked to a guy with a goose laugh, somebody who dresses up as a pirate on the weekends. I never know what's going to happen. It's a great show. Subscribe today, Beautiful Anonymous.
Are you going to talk about why they begged her not to go out with him?
Yes, I definitely will.
Okay.
So as relationships often go at small colleges, Maggie met Neenef, whose last name was Odoh, because they moved in a similar circle of friends. And Neenef was also in the pre-med track, though he actually hated every minute of it.
Oh.
Now, it was not a major he wanted, but one that he felt he had a duty to achieve. After immigrating with his family from Iraq in the 1980s to escape Saddam Hussein, Neenef grew up in Seattle where his father worked as a doctor. And while he was the second son in a large family, his older brother moved away due to extreme family pressures about academics and career, which, according to him, then put him in line to fill the enormous shoes that his brother left behind.
I see.
And for him, this would mean fulfilling his father's dream of becoming a doctor. But this was not Neenef's goal. He loved computer gaming and he wanted to major in computer science. But his father was footing the bill, and as the son of immigrants, Neenef felt both internal and external pressure to bring pride to his father by becoming a doctor.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But though he was academically at Kalamazoo against his will, Neenef made many friends in spite of his reserved personality. For those who spent time to really get to know him, the quiet Neenef was actually anything but. His friends recall him being the kind of guy that you would just have fun with. He had incredible wit, he was known to crack the best jokes, and was remembered as a warm and caring friend who enjoyed nonstop laughter at dinner in the cafeteria. He also loved sarcasm, and he could take whatever he dished out.
Mm-hmm.
And though it was clear that he had some issues getting along with his father, the way he talked about his mother and siblings made it easy to see how much he cared for them.
Okay.
Unfortunately, though, the social aspect of college did not take the pressure off of the fact that his father expected a 4.0 in pre-med every semester.
Oh, gosh, that's a lot of pressure.
Neenef struggled to earn even B's in most of his classes, and when he went to talk to his advisor, it was suggested that he leave pre-med for computer science since that's where his passions lay. But as you could imagine, his father was not pleased with this change and pretty much gave Neenef the ultimatum that if he did not obtain a 4.0, financial support would be withdrawn and he would have to finance schooling on his own.
That's such a shame. Especially, you're not talking about someone who it sounds like offhand is lazy. He just had he was just predisposed to something else and could have probably succeeded. Well,
yep. For a young man who was already struggling academically, the ultimatum added a low simmering anger to Neenef's constant stress of trying to be the good son. His friends had all heard about his issue with his father, and in fact, most would say that it was one of Neenef's favorite topics. And though it was clear that he loved the rest of his family very deeply, his friends could tell that he was being crushed under the weight of his father's expectations.
Right.
It also didn't help that his father had also told Neenef that he was not allowed to date while in school because he had to only focus on his studies. And as I'm sure you could imagine, what do you think this caused Neenef to do?
To date.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Forbidden, okay. But
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think
yeah.
that caused. I think he probably dated because he's a normal, or he was a person
Yes.
in college.
Yeah, but if anything,
Yeah.
it probably made him more determined to get a girlfriend.
Would have done
Yeah.
would have done that for me.
Yeah. And according to one of his friends, Neenef developed a crush on pretty much every girl he met.
Oh.
But the unfortunate reality he faced was that his Middle Eastern upbringing clashed heavily with most American women's values.
Ah.
Now, for one, he came on very strong, which meant that he was often met with intense rejections that he found hard to cope with.
Okay.
But a larger issue was what lurked beneath the surface of his public-facing personality. And only the women he dated got to get a glimpse of it. Now, the first woman to experience it was a freshman named Stephanie Miller. Stephanie had a child in high school and often brought her toddler to class. So Neenef was aware that she was a young, unwed mother.
Okay.
And while no one at college batted an eye, within 3 dates, Neenef bluntly asked her why her parents had punished her for ruining their lives by having a child out of wedlock.
This is like a real culture clash.
Yes. When she told him that her parents had been incredibly supportive of her and they were not upset that they had a grandchild, he acted confused and commented, "I guess the life you lead is punishment enough."
Oh.
He continued to make other comments in this vein throughout the date. So, as anyone would, Stephanie told him she was no longer interested in going out with him.
Right.
And when she saw him on campus the following week, he had a bandaged hand and told her that he was so angry about their breakup that he put his fist through a glass window.
This guy's a ticking time bomb.
Yes, and Neenef also spread a rumor that she had begged for sex on their first date and that he tried to start a fistfight with her new boyfriend, claiming the new man had said terrible things about her.
Okay.
Now, it's unclear if Maggie knew any of this when she began dating Neenef. Probably didn't, I would think. I can tell you Stephanie wasn't part of their friend group.
Yeah.
But regardless, her friends also couldn't really pinpoint much of a reason for Maggie's attraction to Neenef other than the fact that she thought he was handsome.
Okay.
Regardless of what the attraction was, the two began dating in the winter of 1999. According to Maggie's friends, they had an intense honeymoon phase, but when Maggie brought Neenef home to meet her parents a few times during the spring, her mother was quickly able to see that Maggie liked Neenef because she felt sorry for him. Maggie felt that she could take away his anger and make him a better person if she loved him enough.
Okay.
But her parents saw this as a life lesson for Maggie. They thought this relationship would eventually be where she learned that that kind of love wasn't sustainable and that she would eventually break up with him.
Right.
Back at school, her friends had already realized that the two were bad for each other, especially as they watched Neenef try to take Maggie away from them, monopolizing her time and expecting her to prioritize him. Several of them told Maggie what they saw, and when word got back to Neenef, he made it clear to Maggie that he didn't like her friends and that he didn't want her to hang out with them.
Do you know how long?
And-
do you know how long they
Yeah.
were dating at this point? I mean, is this like a couple months romance?
Yes, this was a couple of months because they began dating in the winter and now we're at the spring.
Okay.
And Maggie's friends didn't care. The feeling was mutual. They didn't want to hang out with him either. But instead of this causing the breakup that her friends hoped for, Maggie just compartmentalized her life, spending the majority of her time pretty much bowing to Neenef's demands and then hanging out with her friends whenever he was busy.
Okay.
But in these short friend hangouts, sometimes Maggie revealed pretty disturbing things. At one point, she quietly admitted that Neenef called her a whore at dinner. Another time, he passed several notes to her in class they shared, in which he referred to her as a slut, along with other vulgar, sexualized comments. He also had strict rules about who she could hang out with, and she was not to be alone with any other men, ever. Her friends urged her to leave him, and Maggie would shut down whenever it came up, or she would tell them that they were overreacting. Lots of warning signs here.
So many flags. This poor girl, too, systematically abusing her and demoralizing her. And
Unfortunately, by the end of the spring semester, Maggie was writing most of his papers, spending almost every minute of the day with him, and her roommate attested that Maggie had basically moved into his room.
Ugh.
But as everyone went home for the summer and Maggie returned to her parents' house, Neenef's ability to control her life became more difficult for him.
Because he's not around her all the time anymore.
A series of saved instant messenger conversations from their summer apart clearly showed Neenef spiraling and using mind games to keep control as Maggie's attention was pulled away from him by her summer job and her old high school friends. In these exchanges, he gaslights her, traps her in conversations where she can't win, he demands her help and then refuses it when she doesn't do exactly what he wants, and consistently checked in on her whereabouts to see who she was hanging out with. During arguments, he would continuously claim to love her and then a sentence later berate her. He would sway from intense engagement to ignoring her for long stretches of time if she didn't give him exactly what he wanted. And while Maggie placated him and truly tried to find a meaningful connection and solution in these exchanges, by the end of August, her parents' predictions proved correct, and she broke off the relationship.
We'll return after a brief word from our sponsors.
You know, part of me was so glad to hear this because this is what happens when he can't isolate her anymore, right? The isolation, the tactics start to wean. But unfortunately, now she's broken off the relationship, and this is the most dangerous time for her. And as I said before, I think we probably know he is a ticking time bomb.
Yep. Unfortunately, that is correct. I mean, Maggie's friends were ecstatic because she came back to the fall 1999 semester as a single lady. She was back in the group, and academically, she was on fire. She played some of her best golf games that fall and made a major shift in her career aspirations, dropping pre-med in favor of history and law.
Oh, wow.
So
That's a real shift.
Yeah. So she was fully coming back to herself, which is great because this is showing that, growth. But unfortunately, Neenef refused to let her go.
Of course.
He told all his friends that Maggie cheated on him as the reason for their breakup, while simultaneously instant messaging her to keep up the relationship several times a day.
Of course.
And while her responses were short and aimed at trying to have a civil friendship, he would not let up. By the end of September, he resorted to luring her to hang out or answer the phone under the guise of friendship or needing help with homework, and then verbally abusing her for breaking up with him.
Mm-hmm.
And while several students in the residence hall had heard him screaming at her over the phone at night, and some of his friends noted that he seemed to be fighting with Maggie all the time despite their breakup, no one sensed just how far over the edge of sanity Neenef was actually teetering. Unbeknownst to anyone, on October 8th of 1999, Neenef borrowed a friend's car and drove himself to a gun store where he told the proprietor that he was going on a hunting trip with friends and he needed a shotgun and ammo.
Oh, God.
After the 24-hour wait period required by Michigan state law at the time, Neenef got a 12-gauge shotgun, 2 scopes, and a box of ammo in his dorm and hid it under his bed. On the night of October 16th, Neenef and some friends went to a homecoming dance, and that's where he saw Maggie dancing with a young man named Nick. And he was pretty angered by the sight. He stood on a chair over the dancers and stared daggers into the couple before confronting them and demanding that Maggie not go home with Nick, to which the couple told him to just go away, and they tried to resume their evening.
Yeah.
Around 2 a.m., Neenef instant messaged Maggie, checking to see if she had gone back to her dorm. But she never answered because she was, in fact, spending the night with Nick.
And because she has no obligation to answer an ex-boyfriend.
Correct. That is correct. Who is harassing her.
Exactly.
The next night at 11:15 p.m., Neenef instant messaged Maggie again, asking her to come to his room to read something. Despite her roommate's misgivings about Maggie going to his dorm, Maggie went.
Oh, no.
Around midnight, several students heard what sounded like pots and pans or dishes being thrown against the wall and a woman yelling. Only minutes later, this was followed by screaming and 3 loud bangs. In later interviews, all of these students rationalized these sounds as, quote, not gunshots because the school had a strict no firearms policy. Some said it sounded like someone nailing pictures to the wall. Others said they thought that someone had dropped something really heavy. No one had ever considered that there was a gunman in the dorm. All anyone really knew was that the noise had come from Neenef's room. 2 of his friends knocked on the door, but nobody answered. So they went through a suite mate's room to the adjoining bathroom that they shared. But when they clicked on the bathroom light, a spreading puddle of blood and brain matter was coming out from under Neenef's door. Campus security and police were called, and first officers walked in and recalled it being the bloodiest murder scene of their careers.
Well, this is a shotgun. I mean, this is going to produce, unfortunately.
At close range.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Neenef had shot Maggie twice at close range through the back, a clear sign that she'd been running towards the bathroom door to escape. He then sat with the shotgun between his knees and he shot himself below the chin.
Yeah.
Both deaths were instant.
I knew, just so you know, I had a very strong feeling that he was also taking his own life after this, which I'm sure you probably did as well when you were looking into it.
Around 1 a.m., the college president awoke to a phone call that there had been a murder-suicide in the dorms. And over the next 24 hours, dozens of faculty and administration worked around the clock in what Dr. Griffin remembers as the endless night. They were working to comfort their traumatized students and to navigate the media that swarmed all over campus. The school did have a procedure for handling a student's on-campus death, which included providing immediate counseling to the deceased students' friends, as well as moving students out of the dorms and into new spaces while police worked with the crime scene. Coffee and hot chocolate stations were also set up around campus for the students who wandered around in shock, and all the staff from the psychology department and counseling services were dispatched to the dorms to provide on-site therapy.
What about her parents? Are you going to talk about her parents?
Well, while the president dealt with the media storm, he also contacted Maggie and Neenef's families. And Dr. Griffin remembers being dispatched to one of the dorms with a colleague to break the news about what had happened before students heard it from the news.
Sure, yeah.
Classes were canceled the following day. There were priests, rabbis, and other clergymen brought to campus to help provide counseling, and faculty worked as a human barricade to keep the media away from the grieving students. But when the dust settled a week later and normal campus activities resumed, the looming question for the college administration was what stance would they publicly take on such an act of violence? For Dr. Griffin, who was head of the campus's Women's Resource Center, there was only one stance. This was the pinnacle example of violence against women. The college, however, was not sure that they wanted to state this publicly.
Why?
Well, they've already dealt with several of Neenef's friends who were angry that Maggie received a candlelit vigil while Neenef got nothing. The college also didn't want Maggie's murder turned into a political issue, but Dr. Griffin argued that there was really no other option. I mean, Maggie was the victim of an unstable young man who took her life when he didn't get what he wanted from her.
Right. I guess I don't see another stance either, but okay.
Yeah. Well, despite their initial wariness, college administration eventually agreed to let Dr. Griffin host a symposium in Maggie's memory, framing her death through the lens of domestic violence and violence against women.
Yeah.
But while those who attended the symposium had their eyes opened, Dr. Griffin recalls it being a contentious event with Neenef's friends. Now, they brought a complicated set of emotions. He had been a great friend whom they perceived as someone who had just been hurting, and many outright refused to see him as an abuser. Now, Dr. Griffin was not surprised by this, especially as many of the school's administration also struggled with this label. Now, while today we might find it difficult to understand why, in the late 90s, the cultural perception of an abuser really didn't look anything like Neenef. You know, the abuser back then was like this caricature of a hulking, low-income, usually blue-collared male in his 40s. You wouldn't think of it as like a peer or someone who would be on a college campus.
Right.
I mean, the idea that an abuser could be anyone, regardless of ethnicity, creed, education level, or career path, was kind of a mind-altering concept at this time. Neenef's violence also caused his friends and many faculty and administration to question their ability to recognize an abuser, a thought that nobody wanted to admit they may have missed. And lastly, Dr. Griffin poses the question of whether Neenef's final act of violence destroyed everything else he was, or was there space for Neenef to be a multitude of things? Could he be a great friend, a troubled son, an overly stressed college student, and a violent boyfriend? Now, this is what we struggle with a lot, especially with our work with the lifers, right? Because these things are not mutually exclusive.
No.
Just because you do a horrible thing doesn't make you a horrible person.
Right.
So I can understand while his friends were upset that he wasn't being treated as somebody who was hurting. Some people are saying, no, he was an abuser, but you could be an abuser and also be someone who's hurting.
Because he was
it's not mutually
suffering
exclusive.
as well. Yes, it seems
He
that
was
he
suffering.
was suffering as well. I mean, this is like also when we are on our other podcast more so and we dig into criminology, he had so many, he has this strain. There's a culture clash. There's pressure. I think he's really a perfect storm, too, of someone who internalized that as well as externalized it.
Yeah, and he needed help. And
that's true.
Maybe people ignored some calls for help or red flags. I mean, there's no one to blame but him for his actions. But, I do think we can recognize that, yes, he was struggling in many ways.
Yes.
But regardless of that, and regardless of what his friends believed at the time, I think we could all agree that he fits the definition of a domestic abuser and that he killed Maggie and he is the one responsible for her death.
Certainly.
And now, a brief word from our sponsors.
Now, what about Dr. Griffin? Did her push for bringing awareness to violence against women actually make any lasting impact?
Well, you tell me.
Unfortunately, no.
Oh.
In some ways. So while the school did initially put together a task force to make changes to women's safety on campus and raise awareness of domestic violence, Dr. Griffin reports that by the time of her retirement, none of the changes had lasted more than a few years.
Yeah. This often happens, though, in the face of a tragedy.
And going back to what you teach in policy analysis, this is why policy is not always great as a knee-jerk reaction, because once I don't want to say excitement, but once that emotion dies down.
Yeah, once the emotion dies down, you're left with policy that might not be the right ones. So I also want to point out, I think it's good to highlight the issues, right? Like having a symposium against the violence against women, discussing it, exploring it, talking about solutions. I think that's very positive. But developing anything that was like a quick policy in reaction to one event, and I'm not saying it's not a tragic event, but it doesn't mean it's systemic on that campus, isn't exactly the way we encourage policy to be done.
Correct. Due to administrative turnover and the ever-changing population of students, Maggie and Neenef's names faded into obscurity after their classes graduated, and with them went most of the enthusiasm behind any of the policy changes. But there is a lasting memorial to Maggie. Through fundraisers in the year following her murder, Maggie's golf team raised enough money to install a memorial bench bearing her name on the campus path that overlooks the college's chapel. They also planted a dogwood tree next to it, and for several years afterwards, her parents and friends would gather under it on the anniversary of her murder to remember her. Maggie was also granted a posthumous bachelor's in law at the 2001 commencement, the year she should have graduated.
Right.
And while the president asked for a moment of silence after her name was read, the whole graduating class gave her a cheering standing ovation as her parents collected her diploma.
Her parents were there, to collect her diploma.
Yep.
All right.
I'm also happy to report that though Dr. Griffin didn't see any lasting change, Kalamazoo College now has a sexual violence prevention and advocacy platform in Maggie's memory.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So as of 2024, October has been established as Domestic Violence Awareness Month on campus as a way to keep Maggie's memory alive. They also highlight the work Maggie's parents have done to push legislation that disarms abusers. For any of our listeners interested in learning more, their foundation is called Remembering Maggie, and it provides workshops on healthy relationships, as well as awareness advocacy for domestic violence on college campuses and domestic violence's intersection with gun violence. We'll have a link in our show notes for anyone who wants to learn more about the organization. As we close out today, I'd like to share some statistics from the Remembering Maggie Foundation. 43% of dating college women report experiencing violent or abusive dating behavior, and 84% of women who reported sexual assault experienced it within their freshman and sophomore years. However, 57% of college students polled said that dating abuse is difficult to identify. All right, let's take a moment and talk about these statistics.
Okay.
Because as someone who teaches statistics, even just teaching about crime statistics in our criminology classes, when we talk about victimization and self-report, these numbers are grossly underreported.
Yes.
So again, to say that 43% of dating college women report experiencing violent or abusive dating behavior, I would say that number must be close to double. Because number one, there's an issue with underreporting. And then there's also an issue that sometimes people don't even realize that they're being abused when they're being abused.
Yeah, when I teach specifically when I teach on women in crime too, there's a chapter on victimization that focuses just on domestic violence and sexual assault. That number is always higher on college campuses. And as you just pointed out, Amy, that number is grossly underreported. I mean, when we look at all crime, about half of all crimes are reported. That number drops lower when we talk about domestic violence and sexual assault. So yeah, I mean, take those numbers with a grain of salt.
And also males and people who are non-binary could also be victimized.
Absolutely.
And those groups have even lower rates of reporting.
That's such a great point, Amy. You're so smart.
Yeah, and even as these statistics show us, again, 57% of college students said that dating abuse is difficult to identify. So that just proves the point that we don't even know what we're measuring because people aren't informed as to what's abuse and what's not abuse.
Yeah, such a good point. Yeah.
So something I really like about the foundation, not only is it offering statistics to give us an idea of the problem, they also provide tips on how to help students identify red flag behaviors. So we're going to have the whole list available in our show notes, but I want to take a moment to highlight a few of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
So again, in our show notes, you could learn more about the foundation, and there will also be a link to a PDF document that shows these red flag behaviors. Okay, and I think we can say that, unfortunately, in Maggie's situation, there was a lot of evidence of these behaviors, but nobody maybe was informed enough to recognize it, or I'm not really sure. But
or it wasn't like these red flags weren't as publicized because we're also talking about 25 plus years ago. So
that's true.
This is much more public information now.
Yes. Okay, so the first one, controlling when and how much time you can see family and friends. So we've talked about coercive control many times in our classes, on our other episodes. And along with that is requiring you to spend all or most of your time with them.
Isolation.
So anytime someone's controlling what you're doing with your time and trying to get you to, when someone's trying to monopolize your time, that's a huge red flag.
They're trying to isolate their victims.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And then continuing, monitoring your private communications with others by constantly needing to check your phone, your email, or your social media. Shows a charming, charismatic side to others, but verbally abuses you when you disagree or don't want to do something.
Right.
Threatens suicide or other extreme measures if you try and end the relationship.
Was that present in Maggie's case? I don't know if you touched upon that, or we're just not sure.
I'm not sure, Megan. I wouldn't be surprised if he suggested to her that something bad would happen if they broke up, but I don't have that information for sure.
Right.
The next one, love bombs you following a violent outburst. So basically, this has to do with somebody who, it's almost like Jekyll and Hyde. And we definitely saw behaviors like that with Neenef, where he would berate her and then tell her how much he loved her. And it's, that back and forth between, humiliating someone and then trying to win them back by overly complimenting them.
This is also part of the traditional cycle of violence where an abuser physically abuses usually, and it can be other forms, but traditionally it was physically abuses a victim and then love bombs them. Flowers, sorries, I'll be better. So this is kind of lines up with what we know historically as well.
The last one that I noted here was denies being abusive or blames you for causing them to treat you badly.
Right.
We've heard this before. Like, if only you were a better girlfriend, I wouldn't have to do this to you.
Right.
If only you were a better partner, then I wouldn't have to act this way. And it's just so sad because, people get caught in these cycles, and oftentimes people love their abuser. So it makes it even more difficult.
I mean, I'd say the good news is all of those signs now are very, again, really publicized. And I think other people know it. So now, even if friends and family maybe 25 years ago didn't see it, it's so out there that I think there's more people aware that can also say, hey, I see this going on too.
And a lot of these behaviors are now on social media.
Right.
So it's, sometimes people are exercising this, or sometimes people are displaying behaviors of coercive control for the whole social media community to see. So now people's even acquaintances and not close friends could be like, hey, what's going on here? Like, why is your boyfriend making these comments?
Reminds me of a case that I covered on Women in Crime, Anna Abulaban and Ali.
Yes,
that couple on social media.
They were TikTokers, right?
Yes.
Like on TikTok, people came forward and they were calling out his behavior.
Yes.
So I guess when we talk about the good and the bad of social media, I guess this is kind of good. It's almost like a neighborhood watch idea coming full circle.
Yeah, it is actually.
If any of our listeners are concerned for their own safety in a domestic partnership or know someone in an abusive relationship, we urge you to go to the Domestic Violence Hotline at thehotline.org, where help is available anytime, 24/7. Once again, a big thank you to Brian B. for suggesting this case. We hope our listeners found it insightful, and we hope you learned something today. And if you have a case from your college or university that you would like us to cover, please send us a message on our website. Before we go today, if you'd like to support Campus Killings, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcasts.
Your subscription will get you VIP access to all the shows on the network that not only includes hundreds of episodes of ad-free listening, but also bonus content and early access to episodes.
For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting this show in the process.
Head over to Apple Podcasts and search for either Campus Killings or AbJack, and you can start your subscription with a free trial.
Your support is greatly appreciated.
Campus Killings is hosted by Dr. Megan Sachs and Dr. Amy Schlossberg, with research and writing by Abigail Belcastro. It's produced by Mike Morford of AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to follow Campus Killings on social media. You can find Campus Killings on Twitter with the handle @CampusKillings or on Facebook at facebook.com/CampusKillings. You can also visit the show's homepage at campuskillings.com. Be sure to tune in every other Saturday for new episodes of Campus Killings.